Hey everybody, Dr. Charlton here. Today I'm gonna try to take some time to just show what's the point of marketing research, why do we need marketing research, and kind of try to make some room for that idea in your minds. A lot of people might think that it's unnecessary, that it's not useful, or that it's a waste of resources, or people want to just use their intuition. I'm going to try to make some room for this idea that marketing research is actually useful today. But what I'm, but what I want you to try to distinguish in your head is there's a difference between effective and ineffective marketing research. Obviously, ineffective marketing research is going to not be valuable for companies. But if it can be done well, it's incredibly valuable because it helps companies understand markets and customers, and it helps them adapt, improve products, and uh, trash can poor products before they jump in there. So I'm going to go ahead and share with you right here. I have a quote from Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs, in my mind, is one of the all-time best, marketing research type people. He really understood customers, and that was his strength. That was his superpower. He, as you probably know, was one of the founders of Apple, and he was a big reason why Apple grew to its dominance today. So let's talk about Steve Jobs. What did Steve Jobs say? So here's a quote from Steve Jobs that a lot of people use to kind of slam on the idea that marketing research is even necessary. Some people say give the customers what they want, but that's not my approach. Our job is to figure out what they're going to want before they do. I think Henry Ford once said, if I'd asked customers what they wanted, they would have told me a faster horse. People don't know what they want until you show it to them. That's why I never rely on market research. Our task is to read things that are not yet on the page. All right, so this is an interesting quote, right? So he's kind of slamming marketing research right here, but he's also showing that, he's also signaling that it's incredibly important to understand the customer and to kind of try to figure out what they want. Well, you know, you have to figure out how you're going to do that. Like, is he just drawing on his own mental resources, or is there some feedback from customers, from markets that helps him improve this product? So he must be getting some kind of data. So let's look into that a little bit. So first of all, I want to talk about an example of where marketing research could have helped, but it wasn't available, or wasn't done right, and it ended in a catastrophe. So we had a guy. His name is Ron Johnson. He was associated with the Apple stores and designing the Apple stores. So he did a lot of important stuff for Apple, and Apple stores were incredibly successful right out of the gate. So that's his background. Well, J.C. Penney was struggling, so they hired him. He came into J.C. Penney, which was a major department store at the time, and decided that they needed little boutiques. This is the Nike boutique. So there was this whole section just dedicated to Nike brand, Nike, type sporting type apparel. Apparently sweatsuits. This is the sweatsuit section with swooshes on it. So he felt like that was important. So he made these little boutiques. He's kind of trying to make it look like the Apple Store a little bit, but you can see there's, if you look at the flooring, the ceiling, it still kind of is J.C. Penney-ish, right? But he's trying to move in that direction. He also changed the logo. You can see that the logo has really morphed. I think the 2012 logo that you see there, the really crazy one, that was kind of him. So it was very revolutionary. And the logo had, since his tenure, has changed some more. So he changed a lot of stuff. He did the boutique, he did the weird logo, and then holy smokes, he did this crazy pricing thing. So it used to be where you go to a department store only if there was some kind of deal. Like, you'd be a sucker to buy anything at JCPenney that wasn't on sale. There was always sales or discounts or coupons or something, and that's what people were used to. So he kind of did away with that, and they came up with this really strange pricing. My experience with it was, if you went to the store, you couldn't even find a price. You didn't even know how much stuff cost. And it was just strange. And it was kind of like, now you don't have to worry about the price. Well, people are price sensitive, so it was an issue. And it kind of really backfired. And they were already on their way downhill when he came in. But this really sunk JCPenney. People hated these changes around prices. So there was everyday pricing, they say, no need for coupons, no weekend sale. There were no sales, no discounts. Prices were always the same. But there was no, I feel like people assumed then it was stuck at the high price. Like there was no discounts. So it was always like the full price that nobody was willing to pay anyway. Because those prices were really just kind of a joke. You only paid the discount price, right? So anyway, it was a big issue. It caused a lot of problems. Let's listen to the fallout. I'm going to play this video. Hopefully, I apologize for the sound quality. It might not be great just because of the setup I have here. But let's go ahead and listen to what Ron Johnson says about it.
Ron Johnson, the now ex-CEO of JCPenney, learned the hard way. Turn off your loyal customers and they'll turn their back on you. That's exactly what happened at one of America's storied retailers when it brought Ron Johnson in from Apple to resurrect the company 15 months ago. Johnson was credited with helping to create the formulas for the hyper-successful Apple retail stores and Target. But selling iPads is very different from selling curtain sets and sweatsuits.
I told you transformations are unpredictable and can be bumpy, and this one has been.
In a risky series of moves, Johnson eliminated discounts and coupons, hallmarks of the JCPenney experience that built customer loyalty over the past 111 years.
The big thing is just a legacy of relationship with the customer that can't change overnight, and perhaps it was a little bit too much too fast.
Sales fell 28% in 2012, including a 40% drop over the holidays. The stock followed, dropping 55% in the past year, cutting the retailer's value in half. Johnson's pay was slashed by 97%, but that was from the original $58 million salary and stock package that lured him to JCPenney in 2011. At a recent investor meeting, Johnson owned up to his miscues.
As much as we accomplished last year, we also made some big mistakes. And I take personal responsibility for these.
Johnson cut 13% of JCPenney's workforce to shore up profits, but the drumbeat for his ouster got louder by the day. His strategy of marketing JCPenney as a lifestyle brand instead of a discount brand fell flat. His move to try to open stores within a store never caught fire and pitted Johnson and JCPenney in a bitter legal battle against Macy's over Martha Stewart's signature lifestyle line. Johnson pleaded for patience, but the board couldn't wait and replaced Johnson with Mike Ullman, the man who ran the company from 2004 to 2011.
Many of the changes Ron has started to make are things that Mike would have liked to have done, but was hesitant because of the amount of disruption. So now all of that has happened, and it kind of gives Mike Ullman a little bit of a clean start.
The question now, can JCPenney get its customers back? Christine Romans, CNN, New York.
So the answer to that question is no, they can't get their customers back. This brand was on its way out, but this was just so many nails in the coffin. You can see from the stock price here, you see Target, really surged over the last several years, whereas JCPenney has really been hurt. I only have the data up until the end of 2019 because with the whole COVID outbreak more recently, that's gonna add a lot of noise to the data. So I'm trying to show you the cleaner data. You can see JCPenney is way, way down. So that's what happens when you try to do crazy stuff without getting customer feedback. So I guess my point here is wow, Ron Johnson, innovator, visionary. What he did for Apple was amazing. But what he did for JCPenney was a catastrophe. So the issue is, customer feedback. What are the customers going to think about this? How can we learn how the customers are going to react before we even roll this out to all the stores? So rolling this out to all the stores itself is a hundreds of $1 million invested. So is there a way that we can test the water, get some kind of feedback so we know if it's going to be successful? So that's the question. And that's what marketing research aims to do. It doesn't always do it well. Some marketing research is poor, some is really good. Some is just, it's just you're hoping it works. But that's the point of marketing research, is to hopefully avoid this kind of catastrophe. So I want to do one more statement from Steve Jobs, because Steve Jobs really here he's going to go to battle here with an engineer. There's an engineer here who has strong opinions about how things should be done, and let's hear Steve Jobs' philosophy. And I think it's really important to listen closely to how he focuses on the customer experience and makes that the most important thing, where engineers would have a tendency to focus on product attributes.
Yes.
Mr. Jobs, you're a bright and influential man.
Here it comes.
It's sad and clear that on several counts you've discussed, you don't know what you're talking about. I would like, for example, for you to express in clear terms how, say, Java, in any of its incarnations, addresses the ideas embodied in OpenDoc. And when you're finished with that, perhaps you could tell us what you personally have been doing for the last 7 years.
You can please some of the people some of the time, but one of the hardest things when you're trying to affect change is that people like this gentleman are right in some areas. I'm sure that there are some things OpenDoc does, probably even more that I'm not familiar with, that nothing else out there does. And I'm sure that you can make some demos, maybe a small commercial app that demonstrates those things. The hardest thing is, how does that fit in to a cohesive, larger vision that's going to allow you to sell $8 billion, $10 billion of product a year? And one of the things I've always found is that you've got to start with the customer experience and work backwards to the technology. You can't start with the technology and try to figure out where you're going to try to sell it. And I've made this mistake probably more than anybody else in this room. And I've got the scar tissue to prove it. And I know that it's the case. And as we have tried to come up with a strategy and a vision for Apple, it started with what incredible benefits can we give to the customer? Where can we take the customer? Not starting with, let's sit down with the engineers and figure out what awesome technology we have, and then how are we going to market that? And I think that's the right path to take. I remember with the LaserWriter, we built the world's first small laser printers, and there was awesome technology in that box. We had the first Canon cheap laser printing engine in the world, in the United States here at Apple. We had a very wonderful printer controller that we designed. We had Adobe's PostScript software in there. We had AppleTalk in there. Just awesome technology in the box. And I remember seeing the first printout come out of it, and just picking it up and looking at it and thinking, we can sell this. Because you don't have to know anything about what's in that box. All we have to do is hold this up and go, do you want this? And if you can remember back to 1984, before laser printers, it was pretty startling to see that. People went, whoa, yes. And that's where Apple's got to get back to. And, I'm sorry that OpenDoc's a casualty along the way. And I readily admit there are many things in life that I don't have the faintest idea what I'm talking about. So I apologize for that too. But there's a whole lot of people working super, super hard right now at Apple. Avi, John, Garino, Fred. The whole team is working, burning the midnight oil, trying to, and people, hundreds of people below them to execute on some of these things, and they're doing their best. And I think that what we need to do, and some mistakes will be made, by the way. Some mistakes will be made along the way. That's good, because at least some decisions are being made along the way. And we'll find the mistakes, we'll fix them. And I think what we need to do is support that team going through this very important stage as they work their butts off. They're all getting calls, being offered 3 times as much money to go do this, do that. The Valley's hot. None of them are leaving. And I think we need to support them and see them through this and write some damn good applications to support Apple out in the market. That's my own point of view. Mistakes will be made. Some people will be pissed off. Some people will not know what they're talking about. But I think it is so much better than where things were not very long ago. And I think we're going to get there.
Okay, so I think what if we don't take anything else away from Steve Jobs, just understand the fact that even though he might have slammed on marketing research, I think he's probably slamming on marketing research that doesn't work. Because obviously, when he says start with the customer experience in mind, he's trying to show up for the customer. He knows he's not the only customer in the world that he's got to please. There's billions of customers out there. So the question is, how do we get that feedback that we need? And one thing that I want you to think about before we meet in class next week is think about that JCPenney issue. Think about their boutiques, their crazy pricing, their weird logo. And then I want you to forget any buzzwords or anything you may have learned about marketing research already, but just think like, if I don't know anything about marketing research and I had to sign off on those things or invest in those things, what kind of customer feedback, how could I get customer feedback, and what method would help give me assurance that I was essentially doing the right thing? So think about that. And as Steve Jobs said here, I encourage everyone to focus on the customer experience. And in order to do that, we're going to have to collect feedback from the customers. All right. So we're not, so we have to acknowledge that there are other people out there besides us. We're not the only customer. Everything can't be derived in my head because I don't have the same interests and I don't use things in the same way as other people. And so it's really important to collect feedback in some form. And that's what marketing research does.
Yes.
So, all right. So sorry, I have one more slide here. So there's a lot of ways that research and data is collected by companies. You have 2 main forms. You have really passively collected data and you have actively collected data. Okay, so passive data, a lot of it comes from transactions, right? So if you're selling things, if you're shipping things, if you're taking customer service calls, then you have these transactions. And each one can add data to your data set. So, you have all this information about people because you have their order history, what they ordered, when they ordered it, how much they were willing to pay, how responsive they are to your email campaigns, your email marketing campaigns, maybe website traffic, how people click around on your website and how they experience your website. That's passively collected data. You're collecting that all the time. Now, if you have a special circumstance, or maybe in order to do your strategic planning, you might decide to actively collect data. So that's going to involve talking to customers, surveys, focus groups, this kind of thing. Is an active data collection. And typically we refer to this as marketing research, but the passive data is incredibly important too. And you can also use that for, to understand the customers better and gain insights from them. But for marketing research, typically we focus on the active component, on the active side. So that's probably what we're going to spend most of our time working on in this course. So analysts pull in all this data, look at it, try to make sense of it, and then they have to be able to communicate that information to decision makers. So that's one thing that you need to realize right now, is that you are not going to be decision makers early in your career. You're going to be putting together information that you can express to somebody who will make a decision. And there's no point where you don't really, even like CEOs of big companies have a board that they have to answer to, right? So you have to be able to communicate your ideas and why you think what you think. And the biggest issue is it becomes a question of why. So it's very common for people who are sort of new to industry or younger to just assume that everybody should just know why, and that you shouldn't have to like make a case for it. But the actuality is nobody knows what's inside your head. So you're going to have to figure out how to like fully communicate why you want to choose a course of action that you want to do. And that's what we're going to hopefully help you with in this class. So whenever you develop some idea or suggest something or find some insight, you need to say why it's important or why you think that way, and you need to justify it. It comes down to justifying it. So this is a very simplified version of marketing information systems. All this information flows from these passively and actively collected data sources through analysts and up to decision makers. And this is kind of our process for collecting data. A lot of times this stuff gets skipped by companies like JCPenney. One reason is because marketing research can have a bad reputation at times. Steve Jobs, you'll notice in my first slide, he slammed marketing research. Another reason is because marketing research often ends up being inaccurate or unhelpful, and that's probably partly why it has the bad reputation. But just because something is imperfect and it's done wrong sometimes doesn't mean that we should throw the whole thing in the garbage. Because when you throw marketing research in the garbage, what happens is you're left with only your own insights and your own intuition, and you can't really get a feel for the market and the customers. And there's so many different kinds of customers. And so it's a big mistake to just completely ignore the customers and just think you know best, which is kind of probably what happened with JCPenney. Unfortunately, this gentleman, Ron Johnson, had a lot of success at Apple. And, a lot of that could be due to other people and, customer feedback that other people collected. It could be partly because of Steve Jobs. There's so many factors, but he thought it was all him. And so he thought he was so amazing that he would do the same thing at JCPenney, and it fell flat. So just think about it. Think about getting customer research. And again, I want you to think about, forget all the buzzwords you know about marketing research, like the word focus group, just forget it. And imagine what kind of feedback, if you were going to invest in JCPenney at that point when Ron Johnson was taking over, imagine what kind of customer feedback would help you feel good about the idea. Like, is it talking to people? Is it talking to people that shop there? Is it setting up a demo, so people could see what it's like, and sort of like an experimental kind of thing? Is it a bunch of people sitting around a circular table in a conference room, just, talking about ideas and getting their honest feedback on things? What would it take? What kind of customer feedback would it take for you to realize that his ideas were all terrible? I mean, we all know now that they were objectively terrible. So what kind of customer feedback do you think you could have collected back then that would show that? Let's just think about that. And in class, we'll talk about it. So that's all I have for this video. Thanks for watching, and let me know if you have any questions.